Good morning, everyone. My name is Anton Louis Olivier. I am the chairman of the International Hydropower Association, and very pleased to be your moderator this morning for the session. I'm calling in from Cape Town in South Africa. We've got a panel across the continent, so very glad to be able to welcome you to this regional webinar for Africa of the publication of the 2024 World Hydropower Outlook. The Hydropower Outlook, as you know, is the flagship publication of the IHA and is the main source of information, but also analysis about where the global hydropower sector is going, broken down on various regions, with our focus today on Africa. If we can get the agenda up. Thanks. Yeah. Just for your notice that this webinar is being recorded as well. I'll do a brief introduction, then I'm going to hand over to Leon Guerrier Dufournier from IHA, who will be giving an overview of the Africa section of the Hydropower Outlook, whereafter we will have a panel discussion on the contents. And I'm very glad and honored to be having such an illustrious panel with us. We've got a great mix here from Muketsi Tubela from SEFA, Sustainable Energy Fund for Africa at the African Development Bank. African Development Bank has been and is instrumental in financing and supporting the hydropower sector across the continent. We got Lamu Adu, Engineer Lamu Adu, who is the CEO of Mainstream Energy Solutions. Mainstream is the biggest private operator of hydropower on the continent, based in Nigeria. And then very exciting as well, we got Dia Ia from Nachtigal Hydropower Company in Cameroon. Nachtigal is a continental flagship project, 420 megawatts of new privately financed and owned hydropower being constructed in Cameroon at the moment. I'll be closing the session on the hour with a brief closing remark. But with that, I'd like to then hand over to Leon, the 2024 Hydropower Outlook for Africa.
Thank you very much, Anton Louis. So I'll share my screen in a moment. Can you see my screen clearly?
Yes, we can see that.
Thank you very much. So I will take the next 10 to 15 minutes to cover a few insights from the 2024 World Hydropower Outlook. First of all, the World Hydropower Outlook, for those of you who joined us today who are not familiar with this report, is the annual flagship publication dated by IHA. It monitors and guides the global progress of hydropower development in alignment with net zero goals, featuring new data analysis on installed capacity and upcoming projects. The Outlook is a crucial resource for working with policymakers and to address the urgent need to streamline and expedite the sustainable hydropower development around the world. The 2024 edition was launched globally on Wednesday, 12th of June. First of all, to give you an idea of the format, last year the Outlook reported growth in capacity and generation, but this year the Outlook covers capacity added in 2023, as well as global generation figures, and also the first part of the Outlook address how the largest projects are moving through the pipeline. We also cover a few other topics like sustainable hydropower, getting project finance, new hydropower technologies, but also issues around climate mitigation and adaptation, gender equality in hydropower. And the Outlook presents an action agenda to deliver more, better, and faster. This is for the global aspect of the Outlook. Now for the regional. So For Africa, hydropower is the backbone of electricity supply, providing around 40% of the power in sub-Saharan Africa. We need to increase electricity supply by 50% by 2030 and quadruple it by 2050. While the 2 gigawatts that were added in 2023, the development pace is still falls short of meeting the growing demand and driving economic advancement. Private investment is playing a crucial role in advancing hydropower projects across the region, and public-private partnerships are facilitating the financing and development of major projects. Regional cooperation is improving with power pools and shared grids enhancing resources. We selected 4 key figures from the analysis that we would like for you to remember from this presentation today. First of all, 42 gigawatts of total hydropower installed capacity in Africa, 3.4 gigawatt of pump storage, and last year in 2023, 2 gigawatts were added, and the overall generation number is 174.6 terawatt hour. The first question that the outlook covers is where actually was this new capacity installed in Africa. And as you can see on the screen, Nigeria is on the first spot with an addition of 740 megawatts, leading the continent in new hydropower capacity. It then goes from Uganda to Zambia from 408.2 megawatts to 11.6 megawatts, and with Burundi and Rwanda having the same spot at the fifth one with 26.7. This addition reflects a growing investment in renewable energy and especially hydropower infrastructure across the continent. Regarding the key developments, in 2023, significant developments in Africa included Angola, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, DRC, Uganda, Zambia, and a joint project in Burundi, Rwanda, and Tanzania. I'm going only to focus on the countries highlighted for the presentation, but you're more than welcome to go online and check the entire analysis from the World Hydropower Outlook 2024. For Angola, the 2,070 megawatt Lauca hydropower station was constructed by Andrit and is now fully operational, contributing to the country energy supply and also socioeconomic development, with plans for green hydrogen project in partnership with German companies that are in discussion. In Zambia, in April 2023, ZESCO commissioned the 750 megawatt Catholic Gorge Lower hydropower plant. It was a $2 billion project, and despite challenges, ZESCO completed the remaining 600 megawatt, ensuring full utilization of the plant's capacity. In Nigeria, with the support of Deriva Innova, who installed 475 megawatt Francis hydropower turbines and generator on the Zugran project. The total capacity is now of 700 megawatt. The project is the second largest hydropower plant in the country and is supposed to contribute approximately to 10% of the nation's electricity needs, while also providing flood control and irrigation support. I think we can all see that this project marks substantial strides in enhancing the energy infrastructure across African nations and also contributing to their energy security and development goals. I will be covering Zungero project later on, but we have the pleasure to have Antonio Lamo in the room with us who might have a few words to say about it. Oh, I was too fast again here. Another part of the analysis covers the major projects that are currently in the pipeline. One that is of great significance is the El Menze PSH pump storage hydropower plant near Sefru, which is one of the most significant projects, as I just said, in Africa's pipeline. It is expected to enter commercial operation by the end of 2028 and will add 300 megawatts to the grid. The project will enhance the country overall energy transition and help support them to integrate other renewable energy sources and hopefully improve the grid stability and help support it to meet the peak electricity demand. It's a project that has been co-financed by the Islamic Development Bank. Another project that I wanted to highlight today is the one currently in Tanzania. TANESCO has initiated the connection of electricity from the two 1,115 megawatt Julius Nyerere hydropower project, GNHPP for short, to the national grid. The GNHPP is being constructed under a joint contract with Arab contractors and the LCWD from Egypt. And the first of its 235 megawatt turbines was activated in February 2024. When completed, the project is expected to double the country's current power output, and it will rank as the fourth largest dam in Africa and the ninth largest in the world. Tanzania has also secured funding for the 88 megawatt Kanako hydropower plant, with the European Union and the Agence Française de Développement jointly committing for $155 million toward the project, is expected to have a total cost of around $300 million. A last project I wanted to outline is the Bain Spider project, which also is poised to be a significant addition to the Namibia's energy infrastructure, with a planned capacity of 878 megawatt on the Kunene River Basin. Currently in the permitting stage, the project is expected to be developed in multiple phases, with the commissioning anticipated in 2031. IHA conducted this year an in-depth analysis focusing on the largest upcoming hydropower project worldwide, known as the Big 100. These projects are primarily greenfield developments, which means that they are a newly constructed facility rather than an expansion or upgrades of existing ones. The Big 100 list includes a variety of projects, including those involving pumped storage hydropower, PSH. It's important to note that IHA excluded the Grand Inga project in the Democratic Republic of Congo from this specific analysis. The decision was made because Graninga is exceptionally large in scale and capacity, and its inclusion could significantly distort or skew the overall findings of the analysis. The cumulative capacity of this 100 project in the Big 100 list amounts to an impressive 280 gigawatts. This figure represents roughly half of the total capacity currently in the global hydropower project pipeline. These projects, once completed, are expected to contribute significantly to meeting energy demands globally, while emphasizing sustainable energy solution through hydropower. Within the Big 100 pipeline analyzed by the IHA, African projects constitute a substantial 30 gigawatts of total capacity, and of this capacity, approximately half, specifically 14.45 gigawatts, is in the plan or approved stage of development. This represents over 70% of the global total of planned or approved capacity at this stage. I think this graph, this analysis illustrates the varying complexities and timeline associated with securing financing, regulatory approval, and overcoming environmental and social consideration, especially in the context of Africa. One of the project that I mentioned earlier, the Zingiro hydropower plant in Nigeria, I wanted to make a little pause on this project as we have a mainstream in the room today. So the Zingiro hydropower plant was commissioned in October 2023 in the Niger state in Nigeria, and stands as the country's second largest hydropower facility, as I covered earlier. The project was realized through collaboration with the China National Electricity Equipment Corporation and the Export-Import Bank of China, highlighting the market openness to use international partnerships to overcome financial and technical challenges in its renewable energy sector. And I think it's a really successful project that we should continue to use as a case study to continue and further these conversations. The newest feature of 2024 outlook is the countries to watch for Africa. We selected 4 countries. This year, the purpose of this analysis is to identify nations with significant untapped hydropower potential, but also highlight the varying levels of policy activity and project pipelines. If we take, for example, Angola, it has been studied that Angola has a substantial hydropower potential, which is estimated around 12 gigawatts, and with only 4 gigawatts currently utilized. The government prioritized infrastructure development to meet rising electricity demand, and is aiming for cost-reflective tariffs by 2025, enhancing financial autonomy for utilities. One of the significant development pipeline that we've identified for the country, and project that illustrate how private investments are crucial for advancing projects, would be the Kakulo Kabak Hydropower Station that has been highly supported by China. And similarly, we wanted to highlight Burundi, who has an estimated hydropower potential of 1,700 megawatts, of which 20% could be economically viable. As I just said earlier, there's a strong cooperation with China in the energy sector, and that had helped supported projects like the Ruzibazi hydropower plant, and ongoing discussions and funding mobilization that are currently taking place continue to highlight this. In terms of development pipeline, a project like the regional Rusumo Falls hydropower plant and the Gigi and Mulembe projects are set to significantly increase the country's installed capacity in the near term. Taking a step back to the policy and market and a recommendation that you would find in the outlook. The power sector in Africa faces numerous barriers, which obviously hinder its growth and sustainability. Regulatory issues impede private sector participation and investment. Off-taker creditworthiness presents another challenge, complicating project financing and causing delays. Also, limited access to finance, currency volatility, and governance issues further inhibit infrastructure development. Another point that is of great importance to us is obviously climate change that exacerbates these challenges and potentially could and have increased the frequency of and severity of extreme weather events, stressing the need for countries to take into account climate adaptation in their overall energy system planning. The ongoing transformation in Africa's electricity landscape are reshaping the continent's energy future, driven by a combination of technological advancement, financial innovations, and evolving socio-political dynamics. And these changes are not just altering power networks, but also redefining the role of stakeholders while presenting a spectrum of additional opportunities. There's obviously an investment urgency in the power sector, and it's a great importance with stakeholders emphasizing energy security as the main objective, improve utility performance as well, and imperative to extend electricity access to a continent that needs it. Private sector involvement, particularly IPPs, remain pivotal for meeting Africa's escalating energy demands, and competitive procurement programs and support from development finance institutions are steering renewable energy growth across the continent, as I hope my colleague from AFDB will cover later on. I just wanted to stress that collaboration among governments and private sector entities and international organizations is paramount to drive forward energy transition, which leads me to my last slide of the presentation. A couple months ago, IHJ organized roundtables in Abuja to discuss the topic that we're covering today: how to support the continent to deploy sustainable hydropower more rapidly. From this exercise, we produced and published with the support of the industry and various stakeholders that were with us in Abuja, the Abuja Action Plan, who calls on African government and overall stakeholders. This document was handed to the Minister of Power of Nigeria, and we're hoping that it will have more echo in the future. Just to cover a few of the points that are in this Abuja Action Plan. This is a document that calls on stakeholders to recognize sustainable hydropower as a clean and affordable solution for secure electricity supply, to establish clear long-term plans for renewable energy, including specific targets for hydropower, to integrate hydropower to support the deployment of variable renewable energies, and streamline permitting processes for hydropower projects while ensuring high-quality decision-making. We also call policymakers to implement policies that support decarbonization through sustainable hydropower projects, to secure international financing or create the structures and schemes that allow to secure international financing and support for renewable energy infrastructure. And the two last points are um, around the improvement of grid infrastructure to accommodate this increased renewable energy capacity and ensure that our power projects adhere to international best practices like the sustainability standard. This is all for me. I'm giving the floor back to Anton Louis and our esteemed colleagues for the panel discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leon. If you look at the chat box at the bottom, you'll see the link to downloading the report has been posted there, as well as a link to the Abuja Action Plan. Hydropower probably constitutes about, between a half and a third of the present generation capacity on the continent. So hydropower, more than anything, keeps the lights on for us in the continent. And we got a big fleet of existing plants, which we cannot afford to neglect. These plants are all aging. Average ages of hydropower, and this is a global phenomenon, are like 30, 40 years. So it means these are effectively analog plants to the large extent. We're living in a world where the power sector is being dominated by solar power, a digital technology. We need to upgrade our hydropower plants and our fleet to support increased penetration of solar power, the benefits that it brings in terms of low cost and fast deployment. But the hydropower is required to give the resilience and the stability for these networks. So that network's required. So we need to not take our eye off the existing fleet. This is something where AFDB has been very active on, and we'll get to them in a second. And then secondly, you could see from the statistics shown there that there's a considerable potential for a continued deployment of good, viable, sustainable hydropower in Africa. We've got some of the largest resources available in the continent. And if we want to ensure that, our growing population, Africa's population, is set to double to 5 million people by 2050, a large portion of these people will be in urban areas, will have access to electricity, will have increased demand. We need to support that in a way that provides energy security. If you flick the switch, you want to know that the light goes on. You don't need to go outside and look for an alternative source of energy or find the starter for your generator. We need the security of supply. It needs to be affordable to support economic and social development. And lastly, it also needs to be sustainable in terms of its environmental impact. And hydropower can play all three of those roles. It is doing it at the moment. It continues to do so in the future. With that, I'd like to now go to our panel, and I'll start with Dia from Nachtigal Hydropower Company in Cameroon for just some opening remarks before we will go to questions or further discussion with the panel. And to our online participants, you can post questions in, I think, the Q&A or the chat box. Not quite sure which one, just check which works for you. And then our IHA colleagues will have a look at that and pass on the questions to myself and to the panel. But with that, Dia, some initial remarks from your side, please. You're on mute. That's it.
Yeah. Hi. So thank you for the presentation and the excellent job that was done putting this together. I think the results are very encouraging. 2023 was a good year for East and West Africa, but as we can see, and as you said it again, Anton, there's still a vast untapped potential. And speaking, for example, of Cameroon, which I'm from, the country has the third biggest potential in Africa after Ethiopia and DRC, if I'm not mistaken. We have a 23 gigawatt, a potential of 23 gigawatt versus only 1,500 megawatt of installed capacity. So there's still a lot to do. However, there's some good things happening right now with the construction of Nachtigal and the development of Kikot. And I think it'll definitely be a country to watch in the upcoming years.
Thanks, Dia. Yeah, I think what you said there just underscores the potential, but also the complexity of the role that hydropower can play. Cameroon has got huge potential on not just on the Senegal River, but overall 23 gigawatts. But it doesn't have the demand for 23 gigawatts internally. But integration in the regional power pools, which we see expanding, East African, South African power pool, West African power pools, will allow us more flexibility on offtakes, that you don't necessarily have to have the old case of, you know, a project selling to the national utility and ring fenced within that potential there, but we can look broader. And with that, I'd like to go to Lamu Adu from Mainstream Energy Solutions in Nigeria for your initial remarks, Lamu, and then maybe later on just also touch a bit about the potential that regional integration offers hydro operators like yourselves. But just some initial remarks first, please. Thanks.
Thanks, Anton Louis. Good afternoon, everyone, or still good morning. This webinar is actually coming at a good time and is a good follow-up to the Africa Week, which gave birth to the Abuja Action Plan. And I have some good news coming out of Nigeria after the Africa Week, because the stakeholders are now beginning to realize the importance that hydropower plays in our economic development more than ever before. Just about 2 weeks back, the Ministry of Water Resources and Ministry of Power signed an MOU, to spell out the relationship and the synergy that we've been looking out for between stakeholders in the development of hydropower. That is a very good development indeed coming at this very moment. And the government is now getting more and more focused on harnessing the explorable hydropower potential that the country has, especially coming at the heels of the commissioning of Zingeru, which came at, in fact, it wouldn't have come at a better time because it came in at the time the grid was in serious crisis in Nigeria. So, people that didn't know much about the commissioning or the commercial operation of Zingeru were wondering what is happening, a sudden improvement in the grid, because it came at a time when the hydro plants are expected to actually be going through their annual inspection because we are drawing down, in the dry season, allowing the thermal plants to pick up. Unfortunately, the thermal plants didn't come up for some reasons, including insufficient gas supply. So there was a serious crisis and challenge on the grid. Suddenly, Zingeru came in to bail the cat out. And that, spurred everybody's, attention to, then why can't we have more of Zingerus? So interestingly, even state governments are now becoming interested in partnering with other developers to develop small hydros that abound all across the country. So I must congratulate the organizers and board of Ministry for the Abuja Action Plan, actually. And we expect that this will be replicated across the continent. It shouldn't be limited to Nigeria alone, because the Abuja Action Plan is not meant for Nigeria, it's meant for the whole Africa. And at our end, that is IHA, I want to believe that we should keep the tempo on. We should push through to ensure that all those items that are spelled out in the action plan are pushed through at different levels, either with private developers, with international finance agencies, public, I mean, the governments. We should push through at different levels to ensure that we really have what is happening in Nigeria now across the continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lami. And if I can go lastly to my compatriot Muketsi at African Development Bank, just an intro comment from your side, please.
Thank you very much, and a very insightful presentation. I noted the slide on the hurdles that are faced in the development of projects, and I think it's also good to focus on the key enablers, and potentially as part of this discussion, but other forums, it will be very, very important to also consider that. And coming from a financing institution, I would highlight the role of concessional capital to lower the cost of finance, but also more importantly, to catalyze commercial capital, given that the profile of investors in the sector is changing. I think linked to that, regional integration, Anton, Louis, you've just touched upon that, but I mean, going back to the presentation, specifically making note of Angola, for instance, with the potential that the country has. It is part of the SAPP, but it's not a connected member of the SAPP. So regional integration is going to be crucial in developing the latent potential that we know is available. Linked to that, trading arrangements, because you have to think about what kind of offtake arrangements would need to be in place. There is a process to develop a continent-wide electricity market, for instance, supported by hard infrastructure in terms of transmission and generation through the continental power system, master plan, CMP, and essentially all of these elements would need to come together to be able to close the gap in terms of the potential that exists and the current level of installed capacity and the pace of investment.
Yeah. Muketsi Tobela, thanks a lot for that. Yes, we are sitting at a really interesting point in time where the deployment model for large power sector infrastructure is changing. Historically, it used to be very much country specific. Each country was looking at energy security within its borders, no reliance, no interconnection, no dependency on neighbors, which led to a lot of islands being power sector islands in effect being developed. The regional power grids are dealing with that. But in the past, also the national governments were instrumental in financing these projects, and the implementation went mostly through national utilities. We're seeing a change in that model. It hasn't been replaced entirely, but we see much more deployment now from private sector with different financing requirements on them. And like you said, we need the right financing mix to make sure that the projects can come in at a point which provide value for money for the countries, but also if you've got the private sector in there, provides a necessary return that the private sector investors seek. Maybe if I can ask you, Muketsi, maybe to give us a bit of a overview in terms of the African Development Bank's activities around the modernization of the existing fleet of hydropower plants within the company. Like I said, that constitutes, between a third and a half of what the power that we got in sub-Saharan Africa. We can't neglect that. There are power plants which I know date from the 1920s, which are still operating. We need to keep those plants relevant and possibly running for another 100 years. What's AFDB's views on this?
Certainly, the bank has participated in this modernization program, and this is happening across two phases. The initial phase was identifying potential sites that could be supported, and now we are in the process of implementing support for some of the projects. across the continent. And this is really just to demonstrate the potential, and essentially this hope that coming out of a process like this, there would be the opportunity to scale up. I think Antondori, you mentioned the move to digitalization, which is important given the increased role of variable renewable energy. And in order for hydropower to be part of this process, in addition to providing system stability, there's also the increased requirement for flexibility. So these are some of the questions that would need to be addressed as part of the modernization program. But it does hold significant potential, and it's been good for the bank to be part of this process together with the IHA.
Thank you. Yeah, Nachtigal in Cameroon is a really exciting project. It's 420 megawatts, it's large scale, it's got an innovative financing structure. We haven't seen many private projects like that, hydropower projects being built across the continent, far too few. How did Nachtigal go about dealing specifically with the sustainability, the social, environmental impacts? It's, Cameroon, Central, West Africa, it's from an environmental and social perspectives, diverse, complex environments. How did Nachtigal manage to navigate that process to get to start of construction and the implementation of this project?
Well, I must say that in terms of environmental and social aspect, we received a lot of support from our lenders and our shareholders. As a reminder, we have the EDF group and we have the IFC among our shareholders, and there was really a big support from the beginning. And also having the IFC as both a shareholder and a lender has brought us to apply its ENS performance standards, and these standards are integrated basically in all our policies, programs, action plans. To put it simply, our entire management system revolves around them. Of course, it's not easy because there's a local context to take into account, but I believe we're doing well so far. We do a lot of training. So first of all, our teams were trained and have a strong knowledge of these regulations, but we also train and educate our partners, precisely our subcontractors, the EPC contractors, and the other stakeholders, even the people that are affected by the project, so they know how important and how non-negotiable it is for us to comply with these rules. And there's a lot of audit as well. We audit our subcontractors to make sure that they comply with the regulations, and we are also audited ourselves by a third-party expert. I think I would say the IFC support has been huge into being able to implement these standards.
Thank you. And Nachtigal is one of the case studies for us to show that if you apply the appropriate standards, and ISA performance standards are one, the hydropower sustainability assessment is another set of standards that one can use to guide. And the lesson from this is, if you apply it, you can build and can get the approval and can mitigate all the risks to get your financiers and the local regulatory authorities comfortable with the impact of a hydropower plant. So these are the complexity and the impact of a hydropower plant shouldn't be seen as a killer assumption for developers. You can, in complex environment, by following the right process, have very successful projects, which then attracts in and facilitates the financing of your project. Lamu Adu, if I can move to you. You sit in Nigeria, a very interesting, very complex market. It's one of the first markets where the government decided to, in a sense, get out of the generation sector. There was privatization of the power generation sector. It didn't go all that smoothly. There was expected to be more investment in the power sector, but you've managed to not only get mainstream regional plants up and running. You've also been very successful in acquisitions. Maybe if you can comment a little bit about, operating hydropower assets in such a difficult commercial environment, and how you manage to build and expand your business, dealing with these challenges that we all face of lack of creditworthy off-takers, lack of foreign currency.
Thank you very much, Anton. But before I go to your question, I'd like to say a word or two on the modernization issue raised, and in relation to the support from African Development Bank. Yes, we appreciate the support so far coming from AFDB, but we would like to see that AFDB also gives similar attention to developing greenfield projects as much as they are for modernization, because we've not seen that in recent past. They don't seem to have as much appetite. I think it's it's imperative that they support the government and the would-be private sector to develop a model, maybe a PPP model that will give comfort to all the parties involved to be able to harness these huge resources across the continent. They may have their own reasons, but I think it's good to be flexible on this so that we can move forward, especially now that we are having more private interest in developing hydro projects. Let me come back to the Nigerian environment. Yes, you're absolutely right. It has not been easy, and it's still not easy, but you can only change a situation by being part of it. We came in and we found that it's really not as easy as we thought, but the chickening out is not an option. Yes, so we actually decided to force through and see what changes we can bring into the business, particularly of generating and selling hydro energy. Now, we've been able to, in recent times, mainstream has been in the forefront, and we've succeeded now to convince the government that the single buyer model that has been in place from the beginning of the privatization process is not the way out. Apart from the fact that it's putting so much pressure on the government, it's not also allowing people to come in, investors to come in, because it is very clear that the losses from the discourse, is being pushed back onto the generator. So we've succeeded now. We have this regulatory framework where generators can sell power directly to eligible customers through direct PPA, not necessarily through the single buyer. That has really given us some cushion. And in addition to that, the regional sales of power, which was mentioned earlier, is also supporting us so much, because we are allowed to actually sell power across the border, by signing direct PPA with utilities that requires power that is coming from us. And I can tell you, Zungeru is right now structured by, the whole structure around Zungeru allows us to sell the whole power coming from Zungeru through PPS, not really through the single buyer model, unlike Kainji Jeba and Shiroro, which is owned by another company. So this is a way forward, and it's really giving us some comfort now. And that's why some of us are thinking of developing and acquiring more assets to be able to, because the market in Nigeria, without any doubt, is huge. It's the marketing structure that is the problem. And the government has realized that they cannot continue to subsidize, as it were. So the way forward is to really attract more investment in the sector. In fact, in a part of the MOU signed between the two ministries, Minister of Water Resources and Power, allows for some private, participation. And the PPP I was talking about, the model I was talking about, is also part of what was captured in that MOU to be able to support private sector participation, because the government has realized that they cannot continue as it were, because most of the, if not all the power plants in Nigeria were built, by government. But they have realized that the way forward is to actually allow, private participation to come in and sell power across the border, sell power to customers within Nigeria that can buy energy from 5-10 megawatt and above. In addition to that, the distribution companies have now been mandated to buy power directly from the generating companies, which was not the case before. They were hiding behind the bulk electricity trading company, without actually, collecting the invoice payments that are expected. So with this, I think the environment is becoming more and more comfortable for some of us that are already there, but it has not been easy from the beginning. But I can tell you, things are changing very fast. We can sell the whole of, if you are willing to buy power, Anton, please just let me know. I have enough.
Well, we in South Africa, we've gone now, I think it's for probably 120 days without load shedding, so we've got kids that are 10 years old here that can't remember the lights being on that long. So things are improving. But I think what's very important, Lamo, is what you're saying is that the private sector can innovate, can perform, but it needs to have that freedom. And our old regulated models with national energy security, single buyers, national utilities as sole off-takers, that worked well for some time, but it's no longer the best solution. And we're seeing more countries, Zambia, for example, recently also provided open access to the grid market. And it's a really dynamic market there where we effectively will see the copper industry in the DRC, in the eastern side of the DRC, dependent on power from Zambia. And we need to have flexible mechanisms to do that cross-border trade. Muketsi.
Thank you very much, Anton. It's just a brief intervention just to highlight that the bank doesn't focus on modernization exclusively. There are also greenfield projects that the bank supports, and I suppose it's also a question of history, in the sense that most of the projects in the past historically have been developed through the public sector. But as the models for project development, structuring, and financing are evolving, there is also a change in that. For instance, the CEFA has its first concessional investment transaction in hydropower, which is approved in 2021 in Gabon. And there are several other initiatives that are underway, including advisory services, to look at PPP models, because you need to also look at the enabling environment in order to be able to support financing. But there are several projects that are underway in Madagascar that are being considered, East Africa, Southern Africa as well. And it takes a while, obviously, for greenfield projects to be developed. And in the end, it's a combination of both modernization and greenfield development.
Yeah, thanks, Muketsi. Yeah, I can support that. African Development Bank has been instrumental on many projects around the country, either through the financing or through capacity building support initiatives. But if we look at the demand, the potential, we need a couple of AFDBs out there to support us. And very importantly, AFDB can't do it on its own. We need to mobilize the national financial sectors within our countries to be able to invest in infrastructure. And that's been one of the big constraints that we're sitting with, where that, for example, we see pension funds, institutional capital, who is by definition long-term, who is by definition local, has not really, apart from some cases, South Africa and then in North Africa, has not really been able to provide that capital to infrastructure. And part of those reasons might be regulatory, that the pension funds, institutional investors are limited to investing only in listed instruments, and not many of our power sector infrastructure businesses are listed on stock exchanges. So we need also innovation, not only on the hydropower sector, but also in the finance sector, to say, here's a great asset class. This is where you should be investing in your country. If you don't invest in the power sector, it doesn't help you putting money into, property development if there's no power to power whatever needs to go on in that building. But there are regulated constraints for the access of the financing. Dia, if I can get back to you, I believe Nachtigall's commissioned the first of its units. Can you maybe just take us through just a timeline towards full commissioning? And then, very interesting for all of us, this project is about is 420 megawatts. I believe Cameroon's installed capacity is about 1.4 gigawatts, so 1,400 megawatts. What's the timeline towards full commissioning, and how do you see the integration of such a big jump? It's like almost a third of the capacity in the country coming new onto the grid. How's that going to be absorbed and paid for?
Yeah, just before I answer your question, I just wanted to specify that Nachtigall was financed by 15 lenders, and the African Development Bank is one of them. So that's just to take on one Moketsi was saying. Now, the project timeline. So right now, the progress rate is 95%. So as a reminder, Nachtigall has 7 production units of 60 megawatt each. So the first unit was successfully commissioned in June. So the first 16 megawatt are into the grid, and the 6 remaining units will be commissioned one after the other throughout the year, and we expect full commissioning by end of 2024, beginning of 2025. And so, yes, it's 420 megawatts. It's about 30% of Cameroon's energy needs. But for that energy, for the populations anyway, and the industries to benefit from that energy, like every actor in the sector has to play its role. So we produce, but then we have another company that is in charge of transmission. We have a separate company that is in charge of distribution. So we all have to play our roles. And I know that there's currently some works going on at the transmission company to make sure that by the end of the year, that the energy that will be generated by Nachtigall will be properly transported throughout the network.
Okay, great. Very, very exciting. And as I say, this is a flagship project for all of us. I'd like to just hand over to Leon. We've got a couple of minutes left. I believe we've got some questions from the audience.
Yes, we have actually a lot of questions. We will not have the time to cover them all.
I've left you 5 minutes. Squeeze them in.
I will respond to them in writing after the call. But I'll select a few that might interest few of you in the panel. One of them from Robert Lester is asking about the trends in DFI participation in the continent, and whether certain DFI's companies and countries are playing an especially important or novel role. And also a question
DFIs
about
being development finance institutions like
exactly. Sorry, my
AFDB
apologies.
or others. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And there's another question that is specifically from Moketsi. Are electric cooperative models for sub-Saharan Africa limited to rural electrification? And how can generation and distribution companies key into electric cooperative models for any willing buyer, even in urban areas? There was a question for Dia, but you just asked it to her, Anton Louis, so it's covered. But yeah, let's maybe focus on those two questions.
Maybe on the first one, Moketsi, as our DFI representative, did you get the question, the gist of it? If you could respond for us, please.
Yes, I think the question was around the innovation or supporting novelty within the sector. This is certainly what SEFA seeks to do. So I mentioned earlier the role of concessional capital, typically as part of blended finance structures. We're currently looking at how we could even broaden the suite of instruments that could support projects. For instance, beyond direct lending, is it possible to provide guarantee facilities at concessional rates to support liquidity? As an example, the bank broadly has instruments that would cover both public sector financing from a risk management perspective, for instance, partial risk guarantees, where perhaps the sovereign balance sheet might not be able to carry the contingent liabilities, but also then coupled with the private arm of the bank in terms of financing, so that you can support even private sector-led projects. I think the modernization project is a good example in terms of looking at innovation, and the idea would be to start with demonstrative projects. There is also a project that is underway to support the feasibility study of floating solar, where you have the potential to use existing facilities and essentially be able to jointly operate a solar plant together with hydro. So it is a process, but clearly we are engaged with that process. I think cooperatives, that is an interesting model that is also being considered, for instance, in South Africa as part of the Just Energy Transition program. Certainly in other countries, this has been looked at from an electrification perspective. I'm aware also in other countries in the US, for instance, where you do have a cooperative that is vertically integrated, covering generation, transmission, and distribution. So it is a model that potentially could be considered. But I think in the end, what you need to be sure is that the projects are well prepared and they're bankable, regardless of the source of financing. And this is where upfront preparation support becomes important as well.
Thank you, Moketsi. Yeah, with that, we've reached the end of our time slot. For those who've posted questions and haven't had them answered, the IHA team will get back to you with responses there. I'd like to thank IHA for the preparation, not just of this webinar, but very importantly of the Hydropower Outlook. I'd like to thank my fellow panelists for their really insightful comments they've given. And if I can conclude by, we've heard the case, there's scope for lots more hydro in Africa. And I think we can show that. And Nachtigal is an example, what's happening in Nigeria is an example. We can do good hydro. We can do the best hydro. One of the ways to show that to the world is the continued use of assessment certifications, like, for example, the Hydropower Sustainability Alliance's Hydropower assessments that goes to prove that we can make these projects, develop them to the highest standards and in the way that we require for our to secure financing. Lastly, this isn't the last you're going to hear from us. There's another webinar scheduled for the 6th of August around a very important topic. I won't call it renaissance because it's a rebirth. It's been going strong all along and it's going stronger now of pump storage, hydropower. We're seeing a lot more of the emphasis on the role of dispatchable hydro in the power grid. So join us on the 6th of August for that webinar. And with that, thank you for your attention. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.